The Empire sent their best warriors. Humans sent one. Jane Miller sat in the dimly lit war room of Earth Defense Force headquarters. Red alert lights flashed on the walls. Screens showed an alien fleet entering the solar system. 20 large ships moved past Jupiter, heading straight for Earth. "What do we know about them?" Jane asked. Her voice was calm despite the chaos around her. General Alan Paxton pointed to the main screen. "They call themselves the Zethoran Empire. They've conquered 17 other worlds. Their technology is about 100 years ahead of ours." The room fell silent as a new transmission came through. The main screen filled with the image of a tall reptilian creature. Its scales were dark green with golden patterns. Yellow eyes with vertical pupils stared at them. "People of Earth," the alien said in perfect English, "I am High Commander Vexcor of the Zethoran Empire. Your planet is now under our protection. Surrender within 48 hours or face elimination." The transmission ended. Everyone in the room looked at each other. "How did they learn our language so fast?" someone asked. "They've been watching us," Jane said. "Probably for years." General Paxton slammed his fist on the table. "We need to prepare all nuclear weapons. Call every soldier back to base. We fight." Jane stood up. "That would be suicide." "Sir, their ships can likely stop our missiles before they even leave the atmosphere." "So we just surrender," the general shouted. Jane walked to the main screen and pulled up images of the alien fleet. "I have another idea. The Zethorans look like warriors. Their ships are covered in symbols and markings. I think they value combat and honor." "What are you suggesting, Commander Miller?" asked President Laura Foster, who had been listening quietly. "Challenge them to a contest," Jane said. "Their best warriors against our champion." The room erupted in argument. President Foster raised her hand for silence. "And who would be our champion? We'd need our very best." Jane stood straight. "Me, Madam President." General Paxton laughed. "You? Against their best. No offense, Miller, but you're just one person." "That's the point," Jane said. "We send just one. It will confuse them, make them curious. And I'm not just anyone." The president studied Jane carefully. "You were part of the Prometheus Protocol, weren't you?" Jane nodded. Few people knew about the secret program that had pushed human abilities to their limits. "I was the only successful subject," Jane said quietly. "The others didn't survive the final phase." The room was silent again. "We have no choice," the president finally said. "Make the call." 1 hour later, Jane stood before the communication screen. The reptilian face of High Commander Vexcor appeared again. "You wish to speak, human." "I have a proposal," Jane said. "A challenge according to warrior tradition. Your best champions against Earth's chosen one." The alien's eyes narrowed. "You would fight our warriors." "Just me," Jane replied. "One human against your best. If I win, you leave our solar system and never return. If I lose, we surrender without a fight." Vexcor was silent for a moment, then made a sound like laughter. "One human against our elite warriors. This is either very brave or very foolish." "Those often look the same," Jane said. "Do you accept?" "We accept. We will send 5 of our greatest warriors. The combat will take place on your moon in 24 hours. No firearms, only melee weapons and natural abilities. 5 against 1. General Paxton protested off camera. "I accept," Jane said before anyone could stop her. Vexcor looked surprised. "You accept these terms? 5 against 1. Jane nodded. "I'm enough." After the transmission ended, the room exploded with voices. "Have you lost your mind?" General Paxton shouted. 5 alien warriors. Jane turned to face everyone. "They're overconfident now. They'll underestimate me. That's exactly what we need." "And what makes you so sure you can win?" someone asked. Jane's eyes hardened. "Because they've never faced a human before. They have no idea what we're capable of. The Empire sent their best warriors. Humans sent one. Jane stood in the training room, her body moving through combat forms she had practiced for years. In the 12 hours since her challenge to the Zetherans, she had barely rested. She needed to be ready. "You should sleep," said Dr. Kate Howard, entering the room with a tablet in her hand. She had been the lead scientist on the Prometheus protocol. Jane continued her movements. "I'll sleep when Earth is safe." Kate sighed and placed her tablet on a bench. "I pulled your files from the program. I thought you might want to review them." Jane stopped and picked up a towel to wipe sweat from her face. "I remember everything they did to me." "Then you remember you weren't supposed to survive," Kate said quietly. Jane nodded. She had been born in a small town in Montana. Her parents were simple farmers. But even as a child, she had been different. Faster, stronger. She could run for hours without getting tired. When the military recruiters came to her high school, they noticed her immediately. 13 candidates, Jane said, looking at the ceiling. Only I made it through. The Prometheus protocol had been designed to create super soldiers. Most candidates received mechanical implants or experimental drugs. Jane got something different. The scientists changed her at the cellular level. They rewrote parts of her DNA, enhanced her natural abilities. The process was painful beyond imagination. "The pain training was the worst," Jane said, sitting down next to Kate. 3 weeks of constant pain until my brain learned to block it out." Kate nodded. "Your pain tolerance is beyond normal human limits. Your endurance, too. And your adaptability, the way you can learn new skills just by watching, that was unexpected. Will it be enough against 5 alien warriors?" Kate didn't answer at first. The Zetheran biology reports came in. "They're stronger than us. Their skin is like natural armor, but they have weaknesses." She showed Jane the tablet with diagrams of Zetheran anatomy. "Their joints are vulnerable, and they overheat easily. Their ancestors evolved on a cold world." Jane studied the images carefully. "What about their psychology?" "They value strength above all. Showing weakness is shameful, and they have a strict code of honor in combat." Jane smiled for the first time in hours. "That's something I can use." Meanwhile, aboard the Zetheran command ship, War Master Krazak prepared his weapons. He was the greatest warrior in the Empire, undefeated in 300 combat trials. His green scales bore the gold markings of nobility. A long scar ran from his left eye to his jaw, the only time an opponent had ever wounded him. "Is it true we're fighting just one human?" asked Vextal, another champion. He was sharpening the curved blade attached to his arm guard. "High Commander Vexcor says the humans are trying to trick us," Krazak replied. "They will probably send more warriors once we arrive." "Even if they don't, what challenge could one human present?" laughed Mezcor, the youngest of the 5 champions. His scales were still bright with youth. "I've studied their combat videos. They are soft, weak." Krazak was not so sure. Never underestimate an enemy willing to face impossible odds. Either they are fools or they know something we don't. The 5 champions continued their preparations as the ship approached Earth's moon. Technicians were already building the arena on the lunar surface. The combat would be broadcast to both worlds. "I will take the human myself," announced Mezcor. "I don't want to share the glory." Krazak shook his head. "High Commander Vexcor has ordered all 5 of us to fight. It will demonstrate our superiority to the humans watching." "It seems excessive," said Tralvis, the oldest champion. "There is no honor in such an unbalanced fight." "Honor is earned in victory," Krazak reminded him. "Once we defeat this human, their world will join the Empire. We will have 17 billion new subjects and a new planet rich in resources." As the champions argued, High Commander Vexcor watched them from the doorway. He had conquered many worlds, but something about Earth bothered him. Why would humans send just one warrior? What secret weapon did they possess? "Be vigilant," he told the champions before leaving. These humans are either extremely brave or extremely dangerous, perhaps both. The Empire sent their best warriors. Humans sent one. The moon looked strange with the new arena built on its surface. The Zethorans had created a circular fighting space 500 feet wide. Clear dome walls surrounded it so the fighters could breathe. Around the dome, cameras would broadcast the battle to Earth and the alien fleet. Jane arrived in a small shuttle piloted by Captain Frank Nelson. She wore simple black military pants and a fitted gray t-shirt. A combat knife was strapped to her leg. Nothing else. "Are you sure about this?" Frank asked as they approached the landing area. "You could still back out." Jane shook her head. "Every satellite image shows their ships have enough firepower to destroy our major cities in minutes. This is our only chance." The shuttle touched down near the arena. Through the window, Jane could see the much larger Zethoran ship landing on the other side. It was covered in gold symbols and looked like a predator ready to pounce. "They sure like to show off," Frank said. Jane stood up. "That's their weakness. They need to feel superior." She stepped out onto the lunar surface, her boots making small dust clouds with each step. The lower gravity made her feel lighter, bouncier. She had trained for this in special chambers on Earth, but the real thing felt different. Better. On the opposite side, the Zethoran champions emerged from their ship. They wore ornate armor that gleamed in the harsh sunlight. Each carried different weapons. Jane studied them carefully. The smallest one, still over 7 feet tall, carried 2 short swords. Another had a spear with a curved blade. The third had arm blades attached to his gauntlets. The fourth carried a staff with bladed ends. And the largest, clearly their leader, held a massive sword that would require 2 humans to lift. They entered the arena from one side, as Jane entered from the other. Inside, the air was Earth normal, and gravity simulators provided Earth-like conditions. The Zethorans had insisted on this, wanting to defeat humans on human terms. A hologram appeared in the center, the face of High Commander Vexcor. "The terms of combat are simple," he announced, his voice booming through the arena. "No firearms, no outside assistance. Victory comes through surrender or incapacitation." He paused, yellow eyes fixing on Jane. "Does the human champion wish to surrender now?" There would be no shame. Jane stepped forward. "Let's get started." Vexcor's hologram disappeared. The 5 champions spread out in a half-circle facing Jane. Billions of people on Earth watched on screens, holding their breath. "I am War Master Krazak," the largest champion said, raising his sword. "I have defeated champions on 12 worlds. You faced the best warriors in the galaxy." Jane nodded. "I'm Commander Jane Miller. Earth sent just me because that's all we needed to send." The youngest-looking Zethoran hissed. "Arrogant human. I will take your head as a trophy." Krazak raised his hand. "Wait, Mezcor. Let us observe proper combat ritual." He approached the center of the arena and drove his sword into the ground. "I offer my name and honor to this combat. May the strongest prevail." Jane approached cautiously and touched the hilt of his sword. "I accept the challenge." The other champions performed similar rituals, stating their names: Vextul, Mezcor, Tralvis, and Zexpak. Each placed a weapon in the ground. Jane touched each one. "The ritual is complete," Krazak announced, retrieving his sword. "Now we fight." The 5 champions moved with shocking speed, spreading out to surround Jane. She remained still, watching them circle. Her enhanced senses tracked every movement. Mezcor, the youngest and most eager, attacked first. He lunged with both short swords, expecting an easy kill. Jane didn't move until the last possible second. Then she twisted sideways, letting the blades pass within inches of her body. As Mezcor's momentum carried him forward, Jane grabbed his arm and used his own force to throw him across the arena. The Zethoran crashed into the wall with a loud thud. He roared in anger and embarrassment. "First lesson," Jane said calmly. Humans understand leverage. The Empire sent their best warriors. Humans sent one. The 4 remaining Zethoran warriors studied Jane with new caution. Mezcor picked himself up from the ground, hissing with rage. His pride was wounded more than his body. "Attack together," ordered Krazak. The champions moved as one unit, approaching Jane from different angles. Jane backed away, moving toward a raised section of the arena. The champions followed, their movements precise and coordinated. They had trained together for years. Vextol struck first, his spear jabbing at Jane's chest. She dodged and grabbed the shaft of the weapon. Instead of trying to take it from him, she slid her hands down its length and snapped off the ornate blade at the end. The arena went silent. Breaking the warrior's weapon was deeply insulting in Zethoran culture. "You dare," shouted Vextol. His yellow eyes burned with anger. Jane tossed the broken blade aside. "First blood to Earth," she said calmly. Aboard the command ship, High Commander Vexcor watched with narrowed eyes. "Interesting," he said to his advisors. "She knows our customs." Back in the arena, the champions attacked with renewed fury. Jane moved constantly, using the terrain to prevent them from surrounding her. She jumped, rolled, and spun away from their weapons. "Stand and fight," shouted Zexpak, swinging his bladed staff. "I am fighting," Jane replied, ducking under the staff. "Just not the way you expect." On Earth, military analysts watched the battle closely. General Paxton pointed to his screen. "Look at her movements," he said. "She's studying them, learning their patterns." "But she's not attacking," said President Foster with concern. "She can't win by just dodging." "That's not her plan," said Dr. Howard, who had joined them in the command center. "Jane knows she can't match their raw strength. She's using a different strategy." The battle continued for 20 minutes. Jane had several close calls but remained uninjured. The Zethorans, however, were showing signs of frustration. Their attacks became more aggressive and less coordinated. Tralvis, the oldest champion, paused to catch his breath. A thin sheen of sweat covered his scales. The other warriors were also breathing harder than before. Jane, on the other hand, barely looked tired. She circled the champions, always moving, always watching. "What is she doing?" asked Mezcor between heavy breaths. "She's wearing us down," realized Krazak. "Humans have greater endurance than we do." Jane heard his words and smiled. "Now you're beginning to understand," she said. She suddenly changed tactics, charging directly at Tralvis. The older warrior raised his weapon, but his movements were slower than before. Jane slid beneath his guard and struck him in the back of the knee, a vulnerable joint in Zethoran anatomy. Tralvis fell to one knee with a grunt of pain. Jane pressed her advantage, landing several quick strikes to the same spot. The champion tried to stand but couldn't. "I yield," Tralvis finally said, bowing his head in shame. The other champions stared in shock. One of their best had fallen, not to superior strength, but to strategy and endurance. 4 left, Jane said, backing away to catch her breath. On the command ship, Vexcor leaned forward with interest. She targeted his weakness precisely. "How did she know?" His science officer replied, "The humans must have studied our biology. They're more cunning than we thought." Back on Earth, cheers erupted in the command center. "She did it," shouted someone. "She took one down." "Don't celebrate yet," warned General Paxton. "There are still 4 more, and they won't underestimate her now." In the arena, the remaining champions regrouped. Krazak spoke quietly to his warriors. "Conserve your energy. Take turns attacking. Don't follow her into the higher areas where the Earth gravity is lighter." Jane watched them planning. She had won the first round, but the real battle was just beginning. Her muscles ached and a cut on her arm dripped blood, but she felt more confident now. The Zethorans were strong, but they had never faced a human before. They had never faced someone who had been designed to endure. The Empire sent their best warriors. Humans sent one. The battle entered its second hour. Jane circled the 4 remaining champions, looking for her next opportunity. Sweat dripped down her face, but her breathing remained controlled. Her eyes never stopped moving, watching every detail. "Why do you not attack?" demanded Zexvac, the champion with the bladed staff. "I am attacking," Jane replied, "just not with my fists." The Zethorans were showing clear signs of fatigue. Their natural armor, scales that could stop small bullets, now worked against them. The scales trapped heat, and their bodies were overheating in the Earth's normal gravity and temperature. "Their body temperature is rising," Dr. Howard explained to the Earth Command Center. Jane trained in Death Valley for weeks, running ultramarathons in 120-degree heat. She's using their biology against them. On the moon, Jane suddenly sprinted toward a rock formation in the arena. The 4 champions followed, but they were spreading out, no longer moving as a coordinated unit. Mezcor reached her first. "No more running, human," he shouted, swinging his swords. Jane ducked under the first swing and blocked the second with her combat knife. The small blade shouldn't have stopped the alien sword, but Jane had struck at precisely the right angle, catching the blade at its weakest point. "Humans evolved throwing spears," Jane said as they struggled. "We understand leverage and momentum better than any species." She twisted her knife, and Mezcor's sword snapped in half. Before he could react, Jane struck him in the throat, not hard enough to kill, but enough to make him gasp for air. "We also studied your anatomy," she added, striking 3 more precise points on his chest and arms. Mezcor dropped his remaining sword, his limbs suddenly not responding correctly. "What did you do to me?" he gasped, falling to his knees. "Pressure points," Jane answered. "Your nervous system isn't so different from ours." Mezcor tried to stand but couldn't coordinate his movements. "I yield," he finally said, his voice filled with shame. 2 down, 3 remaining. The battle continued. Jane was not uninjured. A slash from Vextol had cut her shoulder. Zexvac had landed a blow to her ribs that made breathing painful, but she kept moving, kept fighting. "She should be exhausted by now," said Vexcor from the command ship. "How is she still fighting?" His science officers studied the readings. Humans have remarkable endurance. Their ancestors were pursuit predators. They would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Jane circled Vextol, who still fought with his broken spear. She began speaking in the Zetheran language, her pronunciation perfect. "The warrior's code says, 'Honor is found in fair combat,'" she said. "Yet you fight 3 against 1. Vextol hesitated, surprised to hear his language from a human mouth. "Who taught you our tongue?" he demanded. "I learned it from your broadcasts," Jane replied. Humans learn quickly. This moment of distraction was all Jane needed. She darted forward, grabbing Vextol's broken spear and pulling him off balance. As he stumbled, she swept his legs and pinned him to the ground. The hold she used targeted another weakness in Zetheran anatomy. Pressure on a nerve cluster near their spine caused temporary paralysis. Vextol struggled briefly, then went still. "I yield," he said after trying and failing to break free. 3 champions defeated. 2 remained, Zexvac and War Master Krazek. On Earth, people cheered wildly. Humans who had feared the end of their world now dared to hope. In homes and public squares, they watched as one human fought against impossible odds. Jane took a moment to catch her breath. Blood dripped from her wounds, and her muscles burned with fatigue. But her mind remained clear. She had studied each champion, learned their fighting styles, found their weaknesses. Krazak approached his fallen comrade and helped Vextol to the edge of the arena. "You have fought well, human," Krazak said, turning back to Jane. "But now you face the best of the Zetheran Empire." Jane stood straight, ignoring her pain. "Then let's finish this." The Empire sent their best warriors. Humans sent 1. The 4th hour of battle began. Jane faced Zexvac across the dusty arena floor. The champion spun his bladed staff, creating a deadly circle of metal. His scales reflected the harsh sunlight as he moved forward. You have defeated 3 warriors with tricks, HFY said. But tricks will not work forever. Jane watched his movements carefully. HFY was different from the others. More patient, more controlled. His staff kept her at a distance, making it hard to get close enough to use her knife. Jane backed away, moving toward the center of the arena where the ground was flat. HFY followed, his yellow eyes never leaving her. Humans don't just fight with our bodies, Jane said. We fight with our minds. She suddenly changed direction, running toward one of the rock formations. Jumping onto a boulder, she launched herself into the air. The moon's lower gravity, even inside the Earth-normal arena, gave her extra height. HFY wasn't prepared for this move. Jane sailed over his head, twisting in midair. As she passed, she grabbed the center of his staff with both hands. Her momentum pulled the weapon from his grip. Landing behind him, Jane now held his staff. HFY spun around, his claws extended. Impressive, he admitted. But now you fight me at close range. My natural weapons against your soft human flesh. Jane didn't reply. Instead, she broke the staff over her knee, snapping it in two. Now she held 2 shorter weapons, each with a blade at one end. We adapt, she said simply. In the Earth Command Center, Dr. Howard pointed to her screen. Look at her fighting style. She's mimicking his movements from earlier. General Paxton leaned closer. She's using his own technique against him. Jane can learn fighting styles just by watching them, Dr. Howard explained. It was an unexpected side effect of the Prometheus protocol. On the moon, Jane attacked HFY with his own weapon, using moves she had copied from watching him. The Zetharan was shocked to see his techniques used against him. He blocked and parried. But Jane kept pressing forward. You fight like a Zetharan, he said in surprise. I fight like whatever works, Jane replied. The battle continued for several minutes, neither fighter gaining a clear advantage. Jane's endurance was remarkable, but HFY's natural armor protected him from her strikes. Then Jane noticed something. Each time she hit his scales, a small cloud of steam rose from the impact point. The Zetharan was overheating. His movements were becoming slower. Jane increased her pace, forcing HFY to defend more quickly. Each movement generated more heat in his body. More steam escaped from between his scales. Your biology is your weakness, Jane said. Your ancestors evolved on a cold world. Earth is too warm for extended combat. HFY realized what she was doing. Clever human, he gasped. His breathing labored. Jane continued her attack, never giving him time to rest. Finally, HFY dropped to one knee, his body temperature too high to continue fighting. I yield, he said, his voice a mixture of respect and frustration. 4 champions defeated. Only War Master Krazak remained. The crowd watching on Earth exploded with cheers. President Foster turned to her advisors. She's going to win. She's actually going to win. Dr. Howard was not so sure. Krazak is different. Look at him. On the moon, Krazak stepped forward. Unlike the others, he showed no signs of fatigue. He had been watching and learning, just as Jane had. You are remarkable, Commander Miller, he said. No one has ever defeated 4 of our champions. Jane stood facing him, her body covered in cuts and bruises. Blood stained her gray shirt. Her right arm hung slightly lower than her left, a dislocated shoulder she had pushed back into place during the fight. But now you face me, Krazak continued, and I have had time to study you. He reached for something at his belt. A small device glinted in his hand. What is that? Jane asked, instantly alert. Insurance, Krazak replied. A small blue light activated on the device. My people do not like to lose. The Empire sent their best warriors. Humans sent one. The blue light on Krazak's device pulsed. Jane heard a faint hum as it activated. Suddenly, she felt heavier. The gravity in the arena was increasing. Adjusting the gravity, Jane asked, fighting to stay upright as her weight seemed to double. I thought you valued honor. Krazak smiled, showing sharp teeth. "We value victory more. Now we fight on my terms." On the command ship, High Commander Vexcor watched with interest. "The War Master has activated the gravity enhancer. Smart. But is it honorable?" asked one of his officers. "The human has too many advantages in Earth gravity," Vexcor replied. "This makes it fair." In the arena, Jane struggled to move as Krazak approached. Cethorans evolved on a world with higher gravity than Earth. The increased weight barely affected him. Jane tried to dodge his first attack, but her body wouldn't respond the way she wanted. Krazak's massive sword sliced through the air where she had been a moment before. She barely moved in time. "Now you understand, human," Krazak said. "Your speed and agility are gone." Jane backed away, her muscles straining against the increased gravity. She knew she couldn't win by dodging anymore. She had to think of something else. The combat knife in her hand felt as heavy as a brick. Her lungs worked harder to pull in each breath. Even her blood seemed to flow more slowly through her veins. "Tactics," she whispered to herself. "Think." Krazak advanced confidently, his sword ready. Jane noticed something about his movements. Despite the increased gravity, he still fought the same way. He hadn't adapted his style. Jane remembered her training. The Prometheus Protocol had included combat in various gravity conditions. She had fought in chambers with gravity up to 3 times Earth normal. "Never fight the gravity," her instructor had told her. "Use it." Jane changed her stance, planting her feet wider. Instead of trying to move quickly, she focused on efficiency. No wasted motion, no excess energy. Krazak swung his sword in a wide arc. Instead of dodging backward, Jane stepped into the attack, inside his reach. The heavy blade passed behind her as she drove her knife toward a gap in his scales. Krazak roared in pain as the knife found its mark. A small wound, but the first real damage he had taken in the fight. "Impossible," he said, backing away. Jane pressed her advantage. She moved differently now, using short, economical movements. Her body flowed like water, always moving downward with the gravity, never against it. "We evolved to adapt," Jane said between heavy breaths. "That's what humans do best." Krazak attacked again, more cautiously this time. Jane blocked his sword with her knife, the metal screaming as they met. The force of the blow sent vibrations up her arm, but she held firm. For 10 minutes they fought in the crushing gravity. Jane received new cuts and bruises, but she also landed several small wounds on Krazak. The War Master was no longer smiling. "Turn off the device," Jane said. "Fight fairly, and give up my advantage." Krazak asked. "You don't need it," Jane replied. "You're the best warrior in your empire. Prove it without cheating." Krazak hesitated. Her words appealed to his pride. After a moment, he reached down and switched off the device. The gravity returned to normal, and Jane felt like she could float. "Now we finish this," Krazak said, tossing the device aside. "Yes," Jane agreed. "We do." They circled each other in the center of the arena. Both were wounded, both were tired, but neither would yield. Krazak moved first, launching a series of attacks that drove Jane backward. His skill was undeniable. His blade moved faster than the eye could follow. Jane defended herself, but a slash got through, opening a long cut on her arm. Blood flowed freely down to her hand. "First blood to me," Krazak said. Jane didn't reply. She continued to study his movements, looking for a pattern, a weakness, anything she could use. Then she saw it, a slight hesitation when he shifted his weight to his left leg. An old injury, perhaps, something he had learned to compensate for, but hadn't completely overcome. Jane prepared herself for one final effort. Everything would depend on her timing. The Empire sent their best warriors. Humans sent one. The final hour of battle began. Both fighters were exhausted. Krazak's scales had lost their shine, now dull with dust and marked with spots of dark blue blood. Jane's gray shirt was torn and stained red. Her breathing was heavy but controlled. They circled each other slowly. The entire solar system seemed to hold its breath. On Earth, billions watched in silence. On the Zetheran ships, warriors stood frozen before their screens. "Why do your people fight?" Krazek asked suddenly. "You must know we could destroy your world from orbit." "Because we always fight," Jane replied. "Throughout our history, humans have faced impossible odds. It's what we do. For glory, for honor." Jane shook her head. "For survival, for each other. We don't need glory." Krazek considered her words. "My people have conquered 17 worlds. We believe it is our destiny to rule." "And what does that bring you?" Jane asked. Before he could answer, Jane attacked. She feinted to his right, then spun left, directly toward his weaker leg. Krazek shifted his weight to compensate, exactly as Jane had predicted. In that brief moment of adjustment, Jane struck, not at his body, but at his sword. Her knife hit the hilt at a precise angle, sending a shock through the metal. Krazek's grip loosened involuntarily. Jane's left hand shot out, grabbing the sword's handle. With a twist of her body, she pulled the weapon free. The massive blade should have been too heavy for her, but momentum and leverage made it possible. Krazek stepped back in shock. Jane now held his ceremonial sword. "Impossible," he whispered. Jane didn't press her advantage. Instead, she planted the sword in the ground between them. "Take it," she said. Krazek stared at her. "You would give back my weapon." "This isn't about winning by any means," Jane said. "It's about showing you who we are." Krazek reached for his sword but stopped halfway. "And who are humans, Jane Miller?" "We're survivors, adaptable. We learn from every challenge. We grow stronger from every defeat. But we also understand mercy." Krazek straightened to his full height. "In 17 conquered worlds, no species has ever shown mercy to a Zetheran warrior." "Then learn from us," Jane said. "Take your sword." Krazek reached down and lifted his weapon. Everyone watching expected the battle to continue. Instead, the War Master drove the sword back into the ground. "I yield," he said, his voice carrying across the arena. Silence fell. Then cheers erupted from Earth. People hugged each other in the streets. Some cried with relief. "The human has won," announced High Commander Vexcor from the command ship. "By our ancient laws, we must honor the terms of combat. The Zetheran Empire will leave Earth's solar system." Jane nodded to Krazek. "Thank you for your honor." "It was not honor that made me yield," Krazek replied. "It was wisdom. I finally understood what makes humans dangerous. Not your strength or your speed, but your ability to change, to adapt. And your strange concept of mercy." 3 days later, Jane stood before the united leaders of Earth. Her wounds were bandaged, but she stood tall as President Foster placed a medal on her uniform. "Commander Miller, you have saved humanity," the president said. "What can we give you in return?" Jane looked at the assembled leaders. "A ship," she said, "and a crew." "For what purpose?" asked General Paxton. "The Zethorans aren't the only species out there," Jane replied. "We need to be ready, and we need to learn." 1 week later, Jane watched from the bridge of a new ship as the Zetheran fleet prepared to leave Earth's orbit. A communication came through. It was War Master Krazek. "Commander Miller, our paths will cross again," he said. "I look forward to it," Jane replied. "Maybe next time, not as enemies." Krazek's expression changed to what might have been a smile. "Perhaps. The Empire has never had an ally before. It would be interesting." As the alien fleet departed, Jane turned to her crew. "Set course for deep space," she ordered. Humanity just became part of something bigger. The ship's engines hummed to life. Earth grew smaller behind them as the stars beckoned ahead. One human had saved Earth. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humanity could do.